Hello and welcome back to the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. We have now the showdown of the season ahead of us because, as you can see, both funestus and I have 4 games finished. We both have 2 games left, and in both of those games we are both involved. And with only 1.5 points being between us, those 2 games will now decide whether I or funestus will be able to win the group at the end and go up to Grandmaster for next season. So that will be very exciting. I have a small advantage with going into those 2 games because of the small lead I have in the standings, but funestus has it in his own hands as well as I. So now without further ado, we will take a look at the game. And a game that we are taking a look at is a game against funestus and Arne, for whom it is not possible any longer to stay in the league, but he, for the time of the start of this game, that wasn't clear for him, and also it's even with the standings that you know now, it's at least still has to be decided whether he will finish 4th or 5th in the group. Alright, before we are going to start taking a look at the game, we will start with taking a look at the leaders and wonders, and we can see that there are some leaders and wonders for some mixed strategies or for different strategies. We have some lab leaders with Bill Gates, Einstein, Steve Jobs, but also some theater leaders with Fleming and Chaplin. There's no Hollywood, but there is the internet. There's no space flight, but the Manhattan Project is there. There's no Red Cross. There is Gandhi, but no Churchill. Then in H2 we have no ocean liner service, but there is Maria Theresa. We have the railroad plus what? We have Suez Canal plus Cook, so it could there is the potential for a very strong colonization game. We have Nobel and Newton as strong economical science leaders, and Napoleon and Maximilian Robespierre as military action leaders. In H1 there's one military action leader with Jan Žižka. We have Barbarossa and Genghis Khan who can help with the strength. Columbus, Barbarossa, Eleanor, Isabella can all be nice for a potential colonization game. And then we have Michelangelo, who also, of course, has some potential. We have the 2 strength wonders with Great Wall and Medici Castle, 2 happy face solution wonders with St. Peter's Basilica and Forbidden City, and also the Taj Mahal is there. Funestus starts the game with just taking the engineering genius. It should be guaranteed that at his next turn there will be a leader available for 1 civil action, so I think that makes a lot of sense, and then maybe in turn 3 he can take a wonder. And for me, I think it's mainly a decision between taking Aristotle and patriotism, or Clio and patriotism. Alex maybe could be fine, but there is no Saladin, who is maybe the best early replacement leader to get for Alex. And generally, I don't like Alex as much as Clio and Aristotle, and I just think I like Aristotle a little bit more than Clio in general. And here in this situation, I expect the library to be taken away, and then when we take a look at the remaining wonders, first of all, I don't know at all which wonders will be revealed, and if I have a chance to take one of them for 1 civil action at the next turn. But all of them have no 1 resource cost step, meaning it could be a bit difficult to use Clio every turn while not delaying parts of your economy. Of course, maybe there's the chance to grab this rich land after building the first lab at the next turn and then a wonder on turn 3. It could be fine, but I just prefer to have Aristotle, not being that much dependent on the wonders. Maybe just missing out no wonder completely is also fine with Aristotle in the additional science that he gives. So at the end I went for Aristotle. Could be considered to maybe not take the patriotism, but taking it will maybe mean that there will be more cards revealed, a higher chance for wonder to be revealed, and it could still end up being a useful card. So if it is for free, I definitely think it's still nice to take it. Or not nice, but it can be fine. Arne will just take the library. There are a lot of leaders in the row, so he will just now take a strong wonder and will get a leader at his next turn. Funestus will now go for an interesting decision, because he has a lot of leaders to choose from. Maybe you can think about for yourself, what leader would you want to go for in this situation. Funestus actually makes the decision to go for Sun Tzu here, electing him and building a mine. So I was quite surprised by this move, but I think there are definitely some reasons for it. First of all, there's maybe as much synergy for Sun Tzu in the game as it is possible. We have Suez Canal and James Cook, so a big colonization payoff. And then in H1 we have Columbus, and for that Sun Tzu is very nice to have. We have Jan Žižka, Barbarossa, Genghis Khan, Eleanor, and maybe also Isabella for a colonization game. So a lot of leaders that potentially synergize with Sun Tzu. And in addition to that, the Colossus is coming down the road. It's the only one that revealed it will stay on 3 civil actions for me. So funestus should be guaranteed to get it at the next turn, very likely even for 1 civil action. If Arne makes the decision to go for Confucius, which is probably the strongest leader left for him. So yeah, a lot of synergy for Sun Tzu. I think I probably would still not go for him for an additional civil action, and also maybe not over Confucius. But on the other hand, a lot of strong players have pulled off some nice Sun Tzu games, and it's maybe a leader that I'm a bit undervaluing and underestimating. So yeah, funestus goes for an interesting line here, and let's see how it will work out for him. He immediately starts drawing 4 cards. And then it's my turn. I will go for Aristotle. There's an early iron actually in the row, but I think taking it for 3 now and then delaying the mine, or not electing Aristotle, not getting the science would be way too costly. So I will just go for a normal turn, building a mine, increasing my population, and then the question is which card to take for my last civil action. I probably would value the 1 resource from the urban growth a little bit higher than the food from the frugality, but there has to be the question if there are maybe card row reasons that maybe put the frugality over the urban growth. One thing to consider is, of course, if maybe it could be possible to let the Colossus stay on 2 civil actions for funestus, because that's a wonder that he probably wants to get. But the thing is, if Arne goes for Confucius, then the Colossus will be on 1 civil action for funestus, even if I take the frugality from the discard spot. And I kinda expected Arne to go for Confucius, because playing Caesar against the potential Colossus, even when it will stay on 2, and then not getting the science from Confucius, I think just is not that great of a play, so the Colossus will be available for 1 civil action for funestus anyway. However, if I take the urban growth, that means that the iron will now not stay on 3 but on 2 civil actions for Arne. The question is, would that be a problem? Because if Arne is willing to take it for 2, he would need to take, if he wants to go for Confucius, probably wants to take and elect him, and then if he takes the iron for 2, it means that he delays building his mine. But on the other hand, he has now this iron, can maybe build an iron mine directly, so maybe it could be fine for him. I thought, if he has to delay building the mine in order to grab the iron, maybe it is fine for me. On the other hand, it could be a viable play, and it could also be nice for myself to actually have a chance getting the iron. And because of that, I actually at the end went for the frugality over the urban growth to let the iron stay in 3 civil actions for Arne. That of course could mean that funestus will just take it for 2 civil actions, but I would personally be fine with that, because funestus already took Sun Tzu for 2 civil actions. If he wants to have the iron and the Colossus, it means that he will be delaying his lab. He doesn't have a science leader, so he doesn't generate additional science income from leader or wonder, and will be delaying his lab. And I do think with that it can be a bit problematic to get into iron, and if he is willing to pay 2 civil actions for it, I would be fine with it. If not, then if he goes for the Colossus or Arne for Confucius, the iron will be on 1 civil action for at my next turn, and especially with me maybe missing out on the Colossus, or very likely, and then even though there's the St. Peter's Basilica coming down the road, but that's maybe not the ideal wonder to get early. So the iron would also allow me to invest into something. So because of that, at the end I went with the frugality instead of taking the resource, which I would maybe value a little bit higher from the urban growth. I draw 2 strength events. Probably I don't want to push them, but it's maybe nice to have knowledge about them, because with funestus having Sun Tzu and potentially now going for the Colossus, definitely could be that there's a bit of pressure from the strength going on at some point. Arne will just go for Confucius, building a mine, increasing his population, so that's pretty normal stuff. Funestus Seeds opens the development of warfare, does get punished for not having a free population, so that's maybe a bit annoying for him. Both I and Arne will be able to take that one if we want to. And then Funestus will increase his population, it gets him out of corruption. He will go for the Colossus, and he is actually willing to go for the iron. I do think it's somewhat expensive, now taking that at the cost of delaying the lab. Maybe he has the chance to get something like alchemy or printing press at the next turn, even though printing presses would maybe distract him from going for something nice with Sun Tzu. So maybe it could be fine if he builds an alchemy directly, but it is now a bit of a cost, and I was not too unhappy to see this iron taken away from me. At my turn I definitely don't want to push, and no, I then at my turn made a decision that I definitely want to have this warfare for one civil action, because with Funestus having now gone for the Colossus, there might definitely be some military pressure coming. Maybe he will have the chance to go for Yanchushka or something like someone like Genghis Khan or Barbarossa, and then it could get quite threatening very quickly. With having Aristotle, I score 1 science when I take the warfare. It's available for 1 civil action, so I do think it's just a very nice card to take. And the question is how to use the remaining civil actions. I could, for example, just increase my population. If I want to take the free warrior, which as you can see, I did during the game, then I can't build my second lab. I could have decided to not take it and build a lab, and maybe use 1 civil action like that. But with the Sansu things going on, I do think getting a free warrior is not that bad, and the event deck might flip very quickly with also Arne having Confucius. So I made a decision that this warrior will probably be relevant relatively quickly, and I want to take it. And then, of course, I could maybe take the St. Peter's Basilica, but as said, it's probably not an ideal one to invest into early. It's very costly, and the things that it offers you don't give you an immediate benefit or an immediate boost to your economy. Theology could be fine because I get a science from Aristotle, but it's maybe not that great. At the end, I made a decision to go for the alchemy here. Of course, I could also consider taking the iron for 3, but I think the alchemy is also a perfectly fine thing to upgrade, and it's available for 1 civil action cheaper. And with that, I rather wanted to go for the alchemy. Getting some additional science from the alchemy will also make it more easily possible to go for warfare, maybe also another military tech and some other technology as well. With the iron, it can be a bit dangerous against some military play, because you might be a bit low in science, even when I maybe have Aristotle. So I take the alchemy here. Now with my last civil action, I could potentially just increase my population, but I think it's better to just develop the alchemy here. The reason for that is that I'm staying out of consumption, and thanks to the additional food from the frugality, which actually is quite handy, I'm guaranteed, with being at 4 plus frugality 5, food and 6 resource, I'm guaranteed to be able to build an alchemy directly at the next turn, which maybe makes up for not getting the additional science production going this turn already. But I can save a civil action with building an alchemy directly, and at the next turn I will be at 3 science production, and hopefully it won't be too greedy with having taken this free warrior under warfare, so that I can, if there's a military pressure going on, still react. And with that, I do think I want to save up the food, especially because one of the 2 events that require a free worker is already out, so there's only the development of religion left. I will now draw 2 cards, the Knowledge of the Ancients, which is not an ideal event with having no HA wonder, and also the Crusades. Also with having no HA wonder, I do think it's quite important to have something to invest into, which was, because of that I definitely wanted to take the alchemy or maybe the iron, but I think the alchemy is better for me here. Arne Seeds opens the development of agriculture. He's also willing to take the iron for 2 civil actions. He has some additional science production from Confucius, will also have some from the library, so I think for him the iron is maybe a better investment as for Funestus, but of course also Funestus can maybe do some nice stuff and can get some production going quickly. He seeds and opens the development of politics, has now a lot of cards in his hand, can very freely maybe choose in which direction he wants to go in this game, if he wants to go for colonies, maybe some strength events or some stuff. I have also drawn some cards, and I have now 1 tactic available, which could be quite nice. Also I have a colony available, and it is a game where there's Columbus. I have a leader that is maybe nice to have for most of H1, and then now I have maybe the opportunity to go for Columbus as a transitional leader, especially with the Suez Canal and James Cook being there. I think Columbus can be viable, even if you don't have maybe a very strong colony like vast territory or inhabited territory. And with me missing out on both irons, I do think the wealthy territory can actually be quite fine in such a situation where you're only in 3 resource production. Funestus will this turn finally build a lab, at the next turn can maybe start to go for iron production if he wants to. Reveals the Legion tactic interestingly, so there's a chance that that maybe will be the tactic that will be upgraded. Now it is my turn. I make the decision to not cede. I try offering the naval trade agreement to get some additional blue tokens. Maybe it would have been more likely to be accepted if I would have offered it to Funestus, but he could also really get some nice value out of it with the Colossus and potentially going for a big colonization game. So I rather wanted to offer the colonization force to Arne, but he rejects and doesn't want to have meter blue tokens and lose 1 blue token for himself. Then this turn I think it's just too strong to build this alchemy directly, going up to 3 science production and just being very, very efficient. So I want to do this. After this I have 1 civil action left, and I do think it's relatively clear what I want to do with the last civil action. I mean, I could consider something like monarchy, as it is quite nice to have with Aristotle, maybe getting some additional civil actions going and then being able to take even more technologies. But it would maybe still take a little bit of time until I can develop the monarchy peacefully, and also it doesn't combine that well with the warfare, because if you have already the 3rd military action from the monarchy, I don't think you really need a warfare. And with funestus just having revealed a legion tactic, and there at least being a chance that it might be the tactic that will be upgraded from Sun Tzu, plus the only tactic that I have also being an infantry tactic, and I think it is just too important to take the swordsman here, having a military tech available, and while taking it also scoring 1 more science with Aristotle. I will actually also reveal the tactic and will keep a colony in hand, a wealthy territory for Columbus, and also the foray. I thought that maybe with me having warfare and swordsman, I can maybe set myself up to be one of the 2 strongest at least, and could be nice to keep the foray available, because the additional resources that I could get from it are very valuable for me with having missed out on the irons. So I missed out on 1 draw here in order to keep 2 cards that I would really like to keep in hand, and at least it also makes me a bit stronger. Probably it won't be relevant because there need to be 2 more events seeded until the event deck will flip, but who knows, maybe it could still make some difference. Arne seeds opens the development of planning. The options for the development of planning are markets, trade routes, and settlements. Arne will go with the development of settlement, will finish the library this turn, takes the knights. If he leaves the knights to funestus, maybe there's a chance that funestus will take them and then upgrade a knights tactic. Arne would be at the risk of missing out on the 2nd copy, so he just takes this copy of knights for himself, but also as a fighting band tactic for himself that he can maybe use, and also use it to get stronger immediately. Funestus seeds the development of civil life is revealed. He uses the development of civil life to get the iron going. He chooses the development of settlement from the development of planning. Goes for 1 upgrade. The 2nd upgrade is now already at 5 resource production, and he's actually going for Isabella, interestingly, getting an additional resource production immediately. And with going for Isabella, maybe it rather looks like he is setting up for a colonization game, especially because he doesn't get stronger, just stays the weakest at his turn. And so I thought there are probably not that bad strength events coming, and maybe I rather have to expect some colonies. So an interesting decision, but Isabella can definitely be fine. Columbus maybe also could have been interesting with the Colossus, but if he doesn't have a nice colony in hand already, maybe Isabella is just a better pick. That, however, means that Columbus will potentially be available for me if I'm willing to take him with having the wealthy territory in hand. Eleanor could also be a very nice transitional leader for me as an alternative. Now it's my turn, and I'm actually the strongest, and I also have the rebellion in hand that would hit me, but when we take a look at the opponent's civilization, it's also, even if I wouldn't have knowledge about it, I think I would be willing to cede and risk maybe getting hit by the rebellion, and I mean, just all players would get hit equally bad. And with that I made a decision to cede, and I don't have a happy face solution available yet, so instead of the rebellion, I didn't want to see the rebellion. I will actually go for Columbus this turn, so I didn't want to see the wealthy territory, and at the end I just ceded a foray, hoping that with the warfare, the swordsman, and the ability to upgrade the upgraded legion tactic, I will be able to be one of the 2 strongest in the future. The new deposits are revealed, and we immediately see that Isabella gives Funestus some nice value to combine with the 2 iron upgrades. He gets 6 additional resources, and out of the sudden has a lot of resources that he can spend maybe on the Colossus and potential other stuff. I used the development of civil life to develop the warfare for free, going up to 4 strength, remaining the strongest, so that if Arne wants to push with Confucius, maybe if there's a strength event in there, I could have the chance to win it. I will go for 1 more alchemy upgrade, using the additional resources that I got from the new deposits, going up to 4 science production, which I think is quite strong, and I took the development of settlement from the development of planning, just getting an additional population I think would be quite nice. And then I have 3 civil actions left, and as I said, after increasing my population to get out of corruption, I actually made a decision to go for Columbus here. Of course, the wealthy territory is not ideal with Columbus, but as said, with me not having iron mines, I do think the 6 resource can make quite a difference, and it's still not too bad. I mean, in order to accumulate 6 resources, Isabella, the leader from funestus would require 6 turns, and that just gives me that and also 3 blue tokens forever. And I go for that with Columbus. I get the resource in one payment or in one at once, meaning I can maybe use them earlier compared to having Isabella, who maybe accumulates the resource very slowly. Of course, Isabella has also the colonization bonus, but no, I get a colony into play for free. That maybe gives me a bit of a boost for my economy and also sets myself up potentially for Suez Canal if I draw a strong AH2 colony. And with that, I was willing to go for Columbus. Eleanor maybe also could be fine, but I thought I rather want to have Columbus here. After that, I have one civil action left, and with that I actually made a decision to take the Medici Castle, finally taking my first wonder. Of course, it is a bit of an ambitious project, but I do think it could be quite nice to have another source to get 2 strength from, and maybe being better prepared for the fray that is coming. And while it is a big resource cost, at least I do have Columbus combined with the wealthy territory now, which maybe can at the end allow me to finish the Medici Castle and get some benefits from it. So normally I don't like that wonder too much when I maybe could also upgrade my economy, but I also think with both of the irons gone, I still need to invest my resource into something, and so at the end I was actually fine with taking the Himeji, especially because patriotism and frugality would both not be that great cards to take. I will draw 3 cards this turn. Of course, I was kind of hoping that maybe I could also just get a vast territory for Columbus, but I don't get one yet. But I was very happy to see that actually the border conflict is revealed. I was a bit surprised because I thought maybe funestus would have seeded that he would have tried a bit harder to not be the weakest. But for Arne to seed it would be a little bit brave against Sansu and the Colossus. Whoever seeded it, I was very happy that it was revealed that I am actually able to win it. So I think the 3 additional resources are extremely helpful for me. I could now even finish the Medici Castle already at the next turn. Arne will also go for iron upgrades. This turn goes up to 5 resource production, takes Eleanor as a nice transitional leader and a breakthrough. Now it's Funestus' turn. He is the weakest but is still willing to seed. The Dark Ages are revealed, but not a lot of science is lost to that event. He will go for the Code of Laws, which is a bit ambitious at the moment. He doesn't really have the science fit, but it could still be a nice card to have at some point. Maybe he also didn't want to leave it for me with having Aristotle. He will now finish the Colossus. Builds an iron mine directly. He lost 1 mine because of the border conflict, now was able to rebuild it directly as an iron mine. Now it is my turn. I'm actually still the strongest, and with that I still wanted to push. At the moment I'm sitting at 4 science production, while my opponents are only on 2. Of course, maybe they could improve it a little bit, but at the moment I don't really have anything to improve it already in hand or in play. And the event deck might flip relatively quickly, so I was willing to see the scientific breakthrough, especially because I don't have the most science saved up in order to go for government form. It could still be nice for me to get some additional science, and hopefully it will be useful for me. The strategic territory is revealed. As you can see, I was actually willing to bid both warriors. I was not really sure if I would really want to win it for it, but I definitely wanted to make sure that Funestus doesn't get this colony for cheap. I was very certain that with having his big resource production, the Colossus bonus, and also the Suez Canal being the game, he definitely would be willing to maybe send a warrior on 3 resource with Isabella, and so I didn't want to give him this colony for cheap, so I bid 3 instead of maybe only bidding 1. And at least it means, Arne also bid 3, so Funestus would have to pay it that much either way, but he now has to pay at least a resource, a card and a warrior. Still a nice deal for him, but at least he has to pay this 1 resource. I have now 9 resources lying around. I could potentially maybe build 2 swordsmen or something to use those, but I have the Medici Castle lying around that I maybe want to finish anyway. The 2 strength would be enough to make me the strongest again. I would start a little bit of culture production, have the Medici Castle finished. And I also have the chance to maybe finish that now with the masonry. It only saves me 1 civil action in the Medici Castle. Also, I already have upgraded my labs to alchemy, so I can't save more resources there from the masonry. But I thought it might still be a nice card to have. There are wonders like Railroad and potentially Suez Canal in H2. Maybe there's actually still a chance to get something like Forbidden City, even though it is maybe a bit expensive, but I still have the wealthy territory with Columbus. And so at the end I thought, especially also with getting a science for taking it with Aristotle, I want to go for that, and will then finish the Medici Castle. and then take the reserves, because with me being in bronze mines, I thought it could still be quite nice to have those reserves to maybe play them for additional resources, or maybe for food if it should happen that I will, after losing the 2 yellow tokens at the end of the age, be it an amount of food where I can maybe use it to get an additional population out. Could have taken the urban growth, maybe I will need a happy phase solution, but at the end I rather wanted to have the flexibility of the reserves here. Potentially I could have elected Columbus already, but there might be the chance to get some more signs from Aristotle, so I wanted to keep him for one more turn, and I could have maybe then had the chance to take the Taj Mahal, but with me being on bronze mines, that's not really a wonder that I would like to go for in this situation. Arne seats and opens the Confucius event, so everyone gains 1 science. He will now elect Eleanor, because at the next turn it's very likely that the age will actually already end. He will then go for knights as the phalanx tactic available, so he doesn't plan to upgrade to copy the upgraded legion tactic, but he also doesn't have swordsman at the moment, so I think it makes sense to go for this 1 knight. With building that and revealing the tactic, he actually makes sure to already be the strongest, maybe allowing him to push at the next turn. And then he takes the rich land, the Breton circuses, and actually the Taj Mahal, but with him having upgraded iron mines, and also there being no ocean liner service, no Harvard College in the game, I do think it's a fine decision to go for that. Funestus actually manages to get into the Code of Laws relatively quickly, thanks to the science that was revealed by the Confucius event. Is just enough to develop it, and with the breakthrough at least he has a little bit of science left afterwards. Is now relatively low in science, so getting into a government form might be a bit tricky. But maybe he can still do fine. Maybe if he finds some wonders to invest in. He already now takes the Great Wall with combined with the upgraded Legion tactic. That might be quite a nice wonder to get, and allows him to invest his big resource production in. He will now increase his population, builds a warrior, builds another warrior, putting him at 10 strength as soon as he finishes the Great Wall, which he might be able to do at the next turn, maybe even has to do it at the next turn, because he could have an uprising issue at the next turn, and then he would even be at 13 strength. Now it is my turn, I'm the weakest, so I don't really want to push. And in this turn I, first of all, want to avoid being the weakest any longer, especially because I have actually knowledge about the foray that is coming, where I really want to try as hard as I can to potentially win this. And so I will develop the swordsman, and this is the best way to getting stronger. And I will actually play the patriotism, because both the military action and the additional resource are actually quite relevant. So it ends up being actually a relatively useful card, because it allows me to play this. I can then build a swordsman, copy the upgraded Legion tactic that puts me 10 strength, but because of the 1 additional resource that I got from the patriotism, I have now just enough to go for 1 more upgrade, making me the strongest, making it completely certain that I don't miss out on the fray before my next turn. Even if Arne now for some reason gets stronger than Funestus, I would still be stronger than Funestus, so I thought it is worth it to now, first of all, now copy the Legion tactic while we are still in H1, so I don't miss out on H2 draws later on. And also just making sure that I'm the strongest. I could have maybe also played the reserves, but then I wouldn't have enough military actions to actually go for those, the swordsman and the upgrade, and then still being able to copy the Legion tactic. And also, with my last 2 civil actions, I will actually, after electing Columbus, go for the Forbidden City. Which at the first look maybe looks quite odd and very interesting, because I have only 3 resource production, 0 resources saved up, so it's quite a big project. But I still have this wealthy territory, and if I cash that in immediately the next turn, I just can finish the Forbidden City. I can finish the Forbidden City very efficiently, thanks to having the masonry, so it is relatively cheaply in terms of the civil action cost to finish this. I will then, instead of only having 4, I will have 5 civil actions going into H2, which I do think makes quite a difference, and it just perfectly fixes my happy face problems that I have at the moment, and with that frees up 1 worker that at the end I can even put already the next turn into swordsman, because with the wealthy territory and the reserves I have 11 resources at the next turn, which is just enough to finish the Forbidden City and go for 1 more swordsman, putting me 13 strength, and with that hopefully making it quite certain that I will be one of the 2 strongest for the foray. I could have maybe also gone for theology as my happy phase solution instead of the Forbidden City, but I do think with the masonry that is just a very efficient way of fixing my happy phases, and so I wanted to go for that, even though I sadly miss out on another chance to score 1 science with Aristotle at the end. Aristotle is only giving me 4 science over the whole of H1, which is on one hand not ideal, but I still think even a little bit of additional science can still be very valuable in H1, so I was still somewhat happy with Aristotle, and and also I thought this Forbidden City could maybe be an interesting idea and helps me out in a lot of different ways. At the end of my turn I will keep the 2 colonization cards and the territory for Columbus. Now it's Arne's turn. He is the weakest and he is not willing to push with Eleanor, either because of having no event that he wants to push, or because he's actually getting stronger now and maybe wants to give himself the chance to push it the next turn when he's not the weakest any longer. On the other hand, with funestus having the chance to finish the Great Wall, and with me having Columbus, who who might help me in some way to maybe also get stronger, there might be the chance that the next turn he might be the weakest anyway. Funestus finishes the Great Wall, is now at 13 strength, being the strongest again, takes the rich land and also the engineering genius. Now it is my turn, and now I want to get stronger. I don't want to be the weakest with the fray in there, so maybe not using Columbus and hoping to get an H2 colony is not an option. Maybe a small downside of going for this commitment with the Forbidden City where I need a wealthy territory, but I might have needed it anyway, even when I went for something like theology, so I will just cash the wealthy territory in immediately. That gives me enough resource to finish the Forbidden City with only 2 civil actions, making it that I have 3 civil actions left, and if I now play the resource, I can actually build 1 additional swordsman going up to 13 strength, and even if Arne now builds an additional knight, he doesn't have enough to get stronger, so that he would have to do something quite expensive, like maybe taking developing swordsman, increasing population, building 1 knight, and upgrading 1 warrior to swordsman or something like this. And with that I was hoping to not miss out on the fray at the end. After doing all this, I have 2 civil actions left. There would be a code of laws. I could have taken it already with one of the earlier civil actions, for example, instead of playing the reserves, and then I could have developed it already this turn. I have some science available, but I am already on 5 civil actions, thanks to the Forbidden City now, and I do think if you are already in 5 civil actions without having a government form, the code of laws is a bit of a luxury, and even if you have decent science production, you definitely should consider if you really want to invest into the code of laws, and with that make it a lot more difficult to get into an H2 government form, to get into something like coal. So at this point I wasn't willing to pay to invest 6 science to get an additional civil action, also not investing 2 civil actions into it, especially because I have, I think, quite a strong alternative. I can just take rich land and reserves. With me being very low in resources now, I do think it's very important to get as many additional resources as possible from the yellow cards, and I think both of those cards are very helpful to help me getting into coal mines and in generally just having enough resources to play with. I will draw 2 cards, a colonization card and a spy. Arne is now again the weakest. Will he now be willing to push? Now, either he isn't willing or maybe just doesn't have an event. He will now go for the alchemy, increases his science production and can build 1 directly, going up to 4 science production, which is definitely not bad. Now it's Funestus' turn. He's now the strongest. He will push. There's no foray revealed yet. Instead, the heavy cavalry, which would allow me to actually go for the conmon at the next turn. I have now exactly enough science to go for it, but sadly Funestus, of course, sees the big boost that I could be getting from the conmon immediately, and with the revolutionary idea, he actually has enough science to go for the conmon himself at the next turn, and so he makes the decision to use his turn to just take the rev idea, and the constitutional monarchy can maybe develop it at the next turn, and if there are some wonders available, he could still find a way to invest as many resources that he is having. Now it's my turn, and this turn was a bit tricky. I do think there are some different options, maybe not really very, very strong options, but some solid options. I do think I kind of want to take this copy of Cavalryman because I have no knights. I could of course also take knights, but I rather want to have the Cavalryman to have better chance to get into an H3 tactic later on. So I kind of wanted to take those because Funestus, who's playing in front of me, also doesn't have a cavalry technology, so with only 1 cavalryman being left, I just thought there's a big chance that, or a good chance that I might just miss out on them at the end. And then I have 4 civil actions left, and there are a lot of things that I could consider. I really kind of would like to take this reserves. After that I would have 3 civil actions left. I could consider just taking the selective breeding, securing my food solution. At the moment both Arne and funestus have not committed to something like irrigation, meaning there is a chance that I might miss out on selective breedings completely if I don't take one now. So I do think it would be quite reasonable to just take a copy of selective breeding and know for certain that I will have a food solution, but it's also somewhat expensive. I have a full hand. If there's a government farm on the row, maybe coal, it could be a bit more difficult to just get into that. Of course I can just play the reserves, but it could still be a bit annoying if there are a lot of other civil actions that I want to use. Instead of the selective breeding I could just also take the cannons, but I do think if I take one of those cards for 3 it would probably rather be the selective breeding, with both of my opponents also still potentially wanting to go for selective breeding. But at the end I was not willing to go for the selective breeding. I think it was definitely an option that I considered quite heavily. But I also thought about some other stuff, because I actually thought that with funestus having gone for Isabella and having had a Colossus, there's definitely a chance that there might be some colonies coming. And with the Suez Canal being the game and myself already having one colony, it could actually be quite nice to prepare myself a bit better to win those colonies. And because of that, I thought it could be quite nice to go for the navigation here. However, if I go for the navigation, then with being at 12 science at the moment, I would invest 6 science into it now. If I take it, I think I want to develop it immediately, because there might be colonies revealed immediately. I have some cards, but I do think against Isabella and the Colossus, with having that many resources, just those cards won't be enough to help me win a colony in it, but the navigation could maybe make a difference. But if I invest science into it, I don't have enough science to go for a government farm at the next turn, and it might get a bit tricky to then also have enough science to go into coal quickly, and it at the end could just slow my economy down a little bit. And also I don't know for certain whether there are colonies coming or not. Maybe there are actually no strong colonies coming, but I had a feeling that there should be maybe 1 or 2 colonies coming. So I didn't like investing science into the navigation, but then I had an idea on setting myself up in a different way to maybe have better chances to win some colonies. And after taking the reserves, which is just a card that I really want to have for 1 civil action with being on bronze mines, but then with my last 3 civil actions I actually made the interesting decision to take and elect James Cook. This play is on one hand a little bit weird, but I do think it also makes quite a bunch of sense. First of all, I have no leader at all, so I just get now a leader going immediately, who at least gives me at the moment 2 culture production. But, of course, Cook also has the colonization ability, which I do think is quite relevant here, because instead of getting the 3 colonization force from the navigation, I, now withdrawing a bunch of cards, now basically get a 2 additional colonization force, thanks to having James Cook. So I have my leader now. I don't need to spend civil actions later on when I may be distracted by going for coal or doing some other important stuff. I don't have to get my leader then. I can just go for my leader now when I maybe don't have the most exciting stuff to do anyway. And I actually, with having James Cook, might have a chance to win colonies, and with that swing it in my favor of maybe getting a bigger Suez Canal, or maybe making the Suez Canal less big for funestus. And so with that I went for James Cook. Maybe it could also be fine to go for the navigation. The 2 strength would also be useful. Maybe there won't be a government farm at the row at the next turn, and it is not that relevant to not be able to go for one immediately. But I kinda don't like it to not be open for a government farm if I have the chance to do it. And with that, I just went for James Cook at the end, and at least making sure that I get some value out of a leader immediately, instead of maybe having to wait some more turns until I have a chance to get another one. I then will also upgrade one of my warriors to a swordsman in order to be the strongest after my turn. Arne is again the weakest, again is not willing to cede, so this Eleanor is maybe so far not working out ideally for him. He will take the Rifleman and then takes the selective breeding. That was one thing why I thought maybe it could be nice to take the cannons. I thought there are some interesting alternatives available for Arne, so that he might not take them for 2, and now that means that funestus gets the cannons for 1 with having the Great Wall. That's not ideal, but I wasn't willing to take the cannons for 3 just to deny them from funestus, so it is like it is. Arne, with going through 2 upgrades, Rifleman makes sure to be the strongest now. Funestus seeds, maybe not expecting any strength events, but he does get punished for it if Ray is actually revealed, and I do think that is quite a helpful event for Arne, but also maybe especially for me with being on those bronze mines. Funestus can now this turn play the revolutionary idea with that he has enough science to go for the constitutional monarchy, which gives him a big boost, but also there's actually no wonder in the row at all, which is a bit unfortunate for him, because without a wonder being the row, at the moment he doesn't really have a nice way to invest into anything and has now a lot of resources just piled up. At least he gets some decent yellow cards and also the cannons. Now it's my turn, I'm not the weakest, and I actually push the iconoclasm into the deck. Probably it will be H3 when it will be revealed, maybe a lot of events will be pushed, at least then I have an H2 leader and guaranteed don't lose any value when it would be revealed in H2, and of course maybe there's a chance that I will win a bunch of colonies and at the end actually regret that James Cook will be eliminated, but at the moment I have only one colony. It's a bit questionable how strong Columbus will be, not Columbus, James Cook. And with that, I thought Iconoclasm is just a playable event, and hopefully my opponents will go for some leader that will hurt them a bit if those will be removed at the beginning of H3. And also it is nice maybe to push at my turn, because if a colony would be revealed, I would win the tiebreaker. But there's no colony revealed, instead a scientific breakthrough, giving both me and Arne 4 and Funestus 2 additional science. And now there is actually an additional government form on the row. Of course, thanks to the scientific breakthrough, even if I would have gone for the navigation, I would have actually had now enough science to go for government form, so maybe that could have been fine, but it definitely wasn't guaranteed that the scientific breakthrough will be revealed before my next turn, so I do think it was still reasonable to maybe go for the James Cook line instead of the navigation. This turn I can now go for the Republic, it just gives me a very big boost. I'm not willing to pay 2 additional civil actions for the Conmon, I at least have the warfare. Of course it can be a bit tricky on 3 military actions only, but I have an additional civil action, it's cheaper, and I don't want to pay 2 additional civil actions for the Conmon already by taking it. So I will take and develop it, having a bunch of civil actions left, and I actually make the decision to go for a bit of a greedy line. As you can see, I took 2 resources and 1 food from the foray. That leaves me with exactly enough food to increase my population, and actually also exactly enough resources for the thing that I want to do this turn, and that is to actually go for a journalism and build one. That's definitely a bit greedy, but I thought I can maybe allow myself that, and mainly because I have the Amici Castle. Without it, maybe I wouldn't be brave enough to go for this greedy line with the journalism, but I do think with the Magic Castle maybe I am safe enough. At the moment I am at 14 strength, which is perfectly fine, and Arne has only 2 military actions. The strategy will be discarded. Funestus with the Great Wall could have some potential, but at the moment is very low in science, can't go for cannons or riflemen or something at the next turn, so I hopefully won't get punished immediately. And with that I actually was willing to go for this journalism, meaning that I can't put this population into military, which could be bad at some point, but I do think getting 2 culture and 2 science is just a very nice boost, and thanks to having the rich land and now even getting another rich land, which I definitely want to take, a very useful card for me, nice to get it for 1 civil action, and thanks to having all of those yellow cards, I will now increase my population, play the resources, and I could even go for 2 coal upgrades still, even after the investment into journalism, thanks to all of the yellow cards I'm having. I took the left copy of journalism. I don't think there's any big reason for it. I thought probably Arne doesn't want to really have the journalism, so it's fine to just take the left one. I probably thought about it, but I don't remember any concrete reason why I took the left one at the end. I just, maybe I wanted to reveal less cards. I don't know what the exact reason was. But I was quite happy to see that I have now the Republic going with 8 civil actions, that I'm still nicely prepared to get into coal, and that I'm also at 6 science production now thanks to having gone into journalisms. I will keep all of my colonization cards, draw the refugees, the international agreement, and the conquistadors tactic. Arne seeds, and my gut feeling was actually right, because now there is quite a strong territory revealed, a vast territory. Sadly, I have to be a bit careful, because if I bid too much, I might be in danger of an aggression, but at least I do have the Magic Castle, so I can potentially leave me a bit more vulnerable than normally. With that, I was willing to bid 2 swordsmen, all of my colonization cards, and 2 cards from Cook, Thanks to the Meiji Castle, I would still be able to defend myself if I sacrifice another swordsman. That would be a big price to pay, but with there being a Suez Canal, I thought it might be worth it to fight for every colony as hard as I can. All players make a relatively high bid, but at the end, sadly, funestus is able to win it. And yeah, at least has to pay a full legion tactic, 1 resource and a card, but I do think it's still definitely worth it for him. And he has now already 2 colonies. Sadly, I don't have drawn an H2 colony, so if the Suez Canal is revealed now, I do think it would be a bit too risky maybe to go for denial. So I was hoping to maybe draw a new a colony relatively soon. Arne can now also go for a government form. I do think he had just enough to go into Republic and not enough to get into Common, so he will go into Republic, but with the strategy being discarded, he really wants to have a military action leader, and also with Eleanor not doing that much at the moment. At least this time he used her to draw some additional cards, but now he is just replacing her with Napoleon, giving him quite a respectable amount of strength, and also just making sure to have 3 military actions immediately. He will then go for one more upgrade to alchemy, giving him enough science to maybe get into selective breeding potentially at the next turn. The next turn he has also enough resource to maybe finish the Taj Mahal and go for 1 farm upgrade. Now it's funestus' turn. He is very weak. There are some events I think that could hit him quite a bit, so he doesn't see it. Develops the irrigation interestingly, but I mean the selective breedings are late, and with having that many additional little tokens, I do think this irrigation can be just a perfectly fine long-term solution for him. So he develops it, uses the frugality, he has a lot of population already anyway. I mean, he doesn't have any into the military, so once he now rebuilds those 3 warriors, which I was happy to see, because if he maybe could have used this colony to make a transition into something like fortifications, I do think that would have been very bad, but he is missing science to get into cannons. Even if he has the tactic, it's not an option for him, and because of Arne being at 19 strength, I do think he has to be a bit careful, and does that with just going for rebuilding the Legion tactic, and then also going for a bunch of farm upgrades, being now at 3 irrigation farms, so you should have a very nice population income for the rest of the game. His bottleneck at the moment is still the science production. Now it is my turn. And there are actually 2 copies of coal already on the road this turn. I'm not the weakest, but I didn't want to commit to one of those strength events into the deck at the moment. I still don't have any additional food income, and this worker, I might even have an uprising issue relatively soon, so I definitely thought that I might be the weakest for maybe a little while and at the beginning of H3, so I didn't want to commit to any of those strength events. I will just go for the coal this turn, develop it, go for 1 upgrade using the H1 rich land, and thanks to the 2 yellow cards that I have, I will just go for another upgrade, just using my civil actions effectively, getting the upgrades as quickly as possible. I have actually exactly 8 resources for the next turn, meaning that I could potentially just go for 2 selective breeding upgrades, and after doing this I have 3 civil actions left. Not the most exciting options are on the row. At the end I just made a decision to take a copy of frugality, which hopefully at some point will be useful if I hopefully get the last copy of selective breeding. Funestus now has committed to irrigation, maybe has some stuff to do, so hopefully denying the selective breeding won't be an option for him, and then if I go for farm upgrades at some point it will be a useful yellow card. I don't need architecture with having masonry, I don't want to go for the Kremlin, with maybe there still being a chance to get into Suez Canal, and if not the railroad, with being coal mines and having masonry could be a very interesting tactic, interesting wonder to get. So yeah, the only alternative maybe could be to grab the organized religion, but there's still a copy of team sports left, and with that I wasn't willing to pay 3 civil actions for the organized religion. I will just float the last civil action, keep the tactic and the 2 colonization cards, draw another colonization card, also the Scientific Cooperation Pact and the Napoleonic Army tactic, but no event that I can push, also sadly no colony. And now as you can see, the Suez Canal is coming down the road. Arne will offer the international trade agreement for me, giving me additional food production, which I was happy to see, because at my next turn, if there are selective breedings in the row, and I wouldn't have had the additional food, it could be that I go for 2 upgrades and then in 2 turns, with losing to the yellow tokens, I actually have an uprising issue. I mean, then I can maybe go for a happy face solution, but I don't have the option to not go for one because I'm missing 1 food to actually increase my population. But thanks to the 1 food, I'm actually able to increase my population in 2 turns if I go for 2 selective breeding upgrades at the next turn. Arne this turn will go for selective breeding with upgrading the alchemy. He made sure to have enough science for it this turn, also finishes the Taj Mahal, going up to 4 culture production, and then he will just take the breakthrough and ends his turn. Then it's funestus' turn, and when I saw the Suez Canal being revealed, and I think also already seeing already Arne's turn, I was a bit worried that Funestus has maybe now a chance to really get a very big boost to his civilization, because I thought that the Suez Canal is coming down with him already having 2 colonies, and there's Newton and scientific method, and while it might be a lot to get all of this going, it is actually possible, because he could go for Newton, elect him, take scientific method, develop it for free with Newton, go for one upgrade. He still would have corruption, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal, I think, for him, and then he still has enough civil actions left to go for the Suez Canal, fixing his science production, having a big economy, having Newton to save him some civil actions, and then as soon as he finishes the Suez Canal, going up to 9 resource production. He of course will lose 1 production from Isabella, so I thought that might really give him a big boost, and I thought that might be the turn to expect from him, and indeed he will go for Newton, will go for the scientific method, will go for an upgrade. As you can see, it's just enough civil actions left to take the Suez Canal. But he actually doesn't go for the Suez Canal, which I was surprised to see, but I do think that can only mean that he actually doesn't have an H2 colony in hand, because I do think with having a colony in hand, he just has to go for the Suez Canal. I think it would be just too strong for him, even if it means corruption. Yeah, but maybe he got quite a bit unlucky here. He had, I think, a decent amount of draws, but actually it seems like he doesn't have an H2 colony in hand, or he has one in hand and actually made the decision that the Suez Canal is not worth it. But especially with maybe it also being quite strong for myself, I do think that if he had a colony, he definitely would go for the Suez Canal here. And with that, I was a bit relieved, because while he has now even more science production, at least he is only staying at 6 resource production for now, and that could be a lot more, a lot better to handle than when he maybe escalates his position with the Suez Canal. He then takes some cards with the remaining civil actions and increases his population. At my turn, I don't really can see it, but I can at least try to offer the scientific cooperation. I definitely don't want to offer it to funestus, who has a lot of science production in Newton now, but I thought I can at least give it a try to offer it to Arne, and, but he will reject the pact. This turn I will take the cannons. I have the Napoleonic army tactic, and I just really want to make sure that I can use it. I thought about if I maybe just want to take the railroad for 3 at my turn, from the 3 civil action area for even 5 civil actions, because I just thought it's such an amazing wonder for me. Even though it's relatively late, I have the masonry, I have coal mines. I do think it would give me a big boost, would put me at 10 resource production actually, and put me into a relatively strong economical position, combined with also having a culture lead and helping with the strength as well. So I do think the railroad would be quite nice, but I do think it's too expensive to take it from the 3 civil action area, and I do think there's some reasonable hope that maybe it will even cycle back to me. Arne has only iron mines, maybe he will go for the railroad, could still be somewhat fine, but it will be relatively late when he will finish it. And for funestus it's the same, he can't take and finish it at the next turn, so also for him it will be quite late until then he will finish it, and he also has only iron mines, so I don't think it's worth it for me to take it for that big cost, especially because I can use my civil actions somewhat efficiently. I have to spend a lot of them now just to take cards, which I didn't like too much, but I do think all of those cards are still somewhat relevant, and actually with taking all of those cards I will also end the age, which will have an interesting effect on Arne's turn, which we can just take a look at it in a moment. So I will take the organized religion. There's still the team sports left, but I have now the chance to get an organized religion for 1 civil action. There's no Pierre, and that just allows me to fix an uprising issue at the next turn. There's no selective breeding on the row, so there wasn't a chance to go into food upgrades and maybe fix potential uprising issues with just being able to increase my population at the next turn. Then with wanting to build an organized religion, I think getting the urban growth for 1 civil action is quite nice, with still hoping to get into selective breeding. I do think the efficient upgrade is quite nice to have. And then I thought I just want to take even another card. First of all, because I can't really do that much. I could go for a coal upgrade, but I was still hoping to get a railroad at the next turn, and then it could be a bit overkill, and the last upgrade isn't really needed. Also, it actually makes it that I have less resource available for the next turn, and if I don't go for the upgrade, I have exactly enough resources to just take and finish the railroad and build an organized religion with the urban growth, which could be an interesting turn. It would of course come with the cost of delaying the selective breeding even further, but it could maybe still be a viable option, and I didn't want to destroy this with already going for another coal upgrade. And said with taking another card, I will actually end the age for Arne's turn, and as you can see, that will cause immediately some uprising issues for him. He will lose those 2 yellow tokens, he doesn't have enough food to increase his population, meaning he has actually to destroy something to not have an uprising. And with that, I made a decision to take 1 more card. I could have taken a justice system, potentially even invested into it immediately, but I do think I might need a lot of science to get into the Napoleonic army. I maybe want to have enough science to get into something like military theory, and I have 8 civil actions already, so I didn't think in this situation it's not worth it to spend 7 science to go from 8 to 9 civil actions, and instead I do think it's a lot more reasonable to take the rifleman, setting myself up for potential H3 tactics, and also making it that funestus misses out on them, and with him having the Great Wall, that definitely could be relevant. So with that, I will end my turn. I think I will just keep the tactic and 2 colonization cards. I will draw actually a colony now, so the Suez Canal was sadly not really an option at my turn, because I didn't have a colony. Now I do draw one, but maybe the railroad could still be available, and maybe even a better option than the Suez Canal. Now H3 will start, funestus will get some additional draws. Arne seeds and opens the raid, so another Confucius event. And when I talked about his turn, I actually said he can only fix his uprising with destroying something, but that's actually not true, because he can fix his uprising without destroying something, and that is with going for the team sports. But it's of course also not really something that he wants to do, upgrading from random circus to team sports, taking the team sports for 3 civil actions, investing 5 science into it. So even though he doesn't have to destroy something, and maybe this is actually the best option for him, instead of destroying anything, it would be quite painful, everything that he destroys. I do think it's still quite harmful for him, and makes his turn quite a bit weaker. He will then upgrade another farm, allowing him to increase his population at the next turn, and then increasing his population again in 2 turns. And then he just takes the reserves with the last civil action, meaning he doesn't take cavalryman or justice system, which I was happy to see, because it means that the railroad won't be discarded on funestus' turn. Funestus seeds, the developed territory is revealed. I was actually willing to bid both of my 1 swordsman, both of my colonization cards, and 2 cards with James Cook. Sadly, as you can see, it's not enough to win the colony, so James Cook not really doing that much for me, but at least in this situation I do let funestus pay a bit more, and that is actually relevant, because without being able to bid that easily higher, funestus maybe would have won this territory actually for just 1 warrior instead of having to send away 2. He's now back only on 6 strength, and he will now take the urban growth, had increased his population, takes the opera, takes the wave of nationalism, plays the patriotism, builds 2 cannons. It's just enough to get him out of corruption, and then he has the fortifications tactic, putting him at 19 strength and potentially making him quite a bit threatening if he just builds some more cannons with the Great Wall and the fortifications. Definitely something to be careful about. Now it is my turn. I don't really want to push any event. I don't want to push a colony at the moment. I mean, I might have chances to win it, but I don't know for certain. The historic territory can be quite swingy at the end. The Cold War I also don't want to push, with me at the moment being the weakest. So I just skipped the politics phase. I definitely have to fix my uprising issue. For that I will develop the organized religion, build one with the urban growth, being at exactly 12 resources left, meaning now I have to face the decision, do I want to just take and finish the railroad this turn, or do I just want to get my food production going as quickly as possible, thanks to the additional food production from the international trade agreement. Going for 2 upgrades would actually allow me to increase my population already at the next turn, which could be quite important. But at the end, I just felt like going for this railroad, even though it's now already in the beginning of H3, it's just too strong. Going up to 10 resource production, being at 19 strength, getting at least a bit of the help from the strength with that. And so I was willing to delay the selective breeding by 1 more turn. If I really urgently need a population at my next turn, then if I have gone for the railroad, I can also just destroy this bronze mine, basically using the railroad in a way to more nicely being able to afford losing this 1 production and getting a population like this, and also not committing to the selective breeding leaves myself open for potential early mechanized agriculture. If 1 is in the row at the next turn, it could be quite strong to go for mech ag instead of the selective breeding. However, I will definitely still take the selective breeding in hand, just to be able to definitely have a way to go for food production and finally at the next turn, because I don't think I want to delay it even further. But yeah, with the railroad, I thought I have definitely a decent position here. 10 resource production, quite a bit of a culture lead, especially compared to funestus. Not as much science production as funestus, but definitely very decent science production. Only in the food production isn't fixed yet, but I have a way to fix that very quickly. I have the frugality, can maybe destroy this bronze mine to get a population. So hopefully I will have ways to get enough population for the next turns. I will keep again the 2 colonization cards in a tactic, and I will actually draw 2 wars and a military alliance. Maybe Vlada is telling me something here, but at the moment I have only 3 military actions, and we will have to see if I maybe can pull something off with the wars. And if I want to do this, actually is asked from me very quickly, because there's now another colony revealed, and this time, as you can see, I'm actually able to win it for 6, but I have 2 ways how I could now pay for this. Either I just send 2 colonization cards away and 1 swordsman, or I could send 1 colonization card away and then 2 cards with James Cook, but I definitely want to keep the pact, as it is a nice way to use my politics phase the next turn. I definitely want to keep the Napoleonic army tactic, meaning that if I want to use James Cook's ability, I would have to discard both wars immediately. And it was actually a bit of a tough decision. I kind of wanted to keep the colonization card, but it could be quite bad if maybe I get a nice H3 tactic, the military theory, and then I don't have the option to go for a war because I discarded them earlier on. And I was not really sure which cards I would like to keep at the end. I was actually willing to send both of the colonization cards away and keep the wars, but I'm not sure if it is the right decision, because I have a culture lead. I maybe don't really need to go into something like preparing for a big war to win the game. Maybe it could still be nice. Of course, it could distract my opponents from catching up in culture and could still be nice to pull it off, but I maybe don't need it. And with being in 3 military actions, it's maybe also quite difficult to pull it off. Funestus has the Great War and the fortifications tactic. Against him, going for some wars might be difficult anyway. So I think maybe I should have actually rather kept the colonization card, but during the game I just wanted to keep the wars as an option, because I have all of the H2 techs and I'm prepared with that for H3 tactics. So I do think it's reasonable to keep the wars, but maybe I, in hindsight, would have rather kept the colonization card. And now, but I was happy to win this territory. James Cook is now actually producing me 3 culture per turn, which is at least somewhat solid. But he will also be removed relatively quickly, which is maybe fine. Arne losing the 3rd military action hurts probably quite badly, and Funestus losing some civil actions and science from Newton also is quite painful, so I think it's still fine to lose Cook here, even though he at this point is maybe a somewhat solid leader with producing me 3 culture and maybe helping me to potentially win even more colonies that could be coming. Arne gets a bit stronger with building a 2nd team sports, takes the air forces to reserves in the multimedia. Now it's Funestus' turn. He will cede, and there is actually the iconoclasm revealed. At least I was happy to see that it was revealed at the beginning of Funestus' turn, so he immediately will now miss out on the value from Newton. We will see that during this turn he will develop 1 technology, so he misses out on a civil action and 2 science, which I do think is probably worth more than the 3 culture that I'm losing from James Cook. So I do think he gets maybe hit a bit harder than I am. Of course, also depending on how quickly he gets a new leader going. He could potentially go for Ghani, but with him having the Great Wall, I don't think he wants to remove the option from him to maybe go for some wars at some point. He actually builds 1 opera, gets a bit of culture production going, maybe doesn't want to fall behind even further, and then takes some yellow cards with the reserves and the Ilm growth. And I was just very happy to see that he's just sitting on 6 resource production. It could have been a lot higher if he maybe had a colony earlier on and would have gone for the Suez Canal. At my turn, I don't have a lot else to do in offering the military alliance, and this decision is mainly influenced actually by the tournament standings. The Funestus is just my main opponent for fighting for the 1st position, and yeah, with that I rather wanted to offer the pact to Arne, and he accepts it. As you can see, there is actually in mechanized agriculture now on the row, but it is available for 3 civil action, and at the end I came to the conclusion that I'm not willing to pay that many additional civil actions only to get a mechanized agriculture. Maybe if it would have been available for cheaper, or if there wouldn't have been that many nice ways to spend the civil actions this turn, I could have considered it, but now I will just go for the selective breedings with going for 2 upgrades, and thanks to the inhabited territory that I won, I will actually be able with the frugality to increase my population 2 times in the next turn, already having a free population. So the last thing that maybe was a bit of a bottleneck, I think is now finally very nicely fixed. which I was happy about. And yeah, then with my remaining civil actions, I just made a decision to take the fast food chains, because when we take a look at the wonders, Empire State Building can be a bit tricky. Internet has some potential, but at the moment it's not clear how nicely I will be able to make it quite big. United Nations could be fine, Manhattan Project maybe could be fine, but the fast food chains probably at the end is the best one. I have now the chance to take it from the one civil action area. I don't have that much else to do. It would have been nice to maybe take the patriotism. That's definitely hurts a bit to miss out on that, but yeah, I do think it's a nice opportunity to take a wonder that I can finish maybe at the end of the game and get some additional culture going. And then with the one civil action left, I will just take the revolutionary idea. I will pass on the fundamentalism and the communism, so I'm a bit dependent on the 2 copies of military theory, but at least there are 2 copies, so I was hoping that maybe at some point I will have the chance to take one of them. And also I was a bit unhappy to see this Mandela coming down the road, because for me it just was too expensive to go for him, especially with the nice alternatives and with the important thing that I have to do with going for some food upgrades. For Arne, with having an excess of happy faces, I do think it also will be too expensive for him to go for Mandela. Maybe it could be considered. He will be giving him for a culture production immediately and a civil action, and he just has a leader going immediately. But I thought he probably won't go for him, and then funestus has the chance to get him for 1 civil action. He can increase his population 2 times with this, has an unhappy worker, and can get a very early replacement for the leader that he lost to the iconoclasm. I was a bit unhappy about this, but no, I can't really do anything about it, I think. I will now draw 3 cards, even another war and a modern army tactic, so I do think Vlada is pushing me a bit into this direction of maybe setting up for a war, but as soon as I don't get the military theory, I don't think I can really start investing into this anyway. I mean, maybe I can, but I would miss out on maybe some draws, potentially miss out on some impacts, and I don't think I want to do this. There's a strategic territory revealed. I was actually willing to bid 2 swordsmen for that in 1 card. Would be a bit costly, but I do think it would be worth it to get the 4 strength and the additional draws. Maybe it could have been even worth it to send the whole army, but I would drop down quite a bit in strength and I wouldn't be able to sacrifice the unit with the Magic Castle. So at the end I was only willing to bid 7, at least still making it a bit more costly for Arne, but he still wins it for 1 knight, which I do think is a very nice deal for him. He, this turn, has the chance to get a military theory and he takes it immediately. He has lost Napoleon. I do think he really wants to upgrade his military actions, and also if he doesn't take it, it's very likely that I will be taking it, and so he just is willing to pay the cost to take it. He then builds a lab, interestingly. Interesting decision, but with 9 science, he's just enough to go for multimedia the next turn. He's actually not enough food. Maybe he has to play the reserves for that. But I mean, it could maybe be nice to have the option to go for multimedia at the next turn, even if it is expensive. He then copies to the phalanx tactic, going up to 1 more strength. He still draws 3 cards, so definitely worth it to go for this copying of the tactic. Funestus this turn will indeed increase his population 2 times, will go for Mandela, will get a new leader immediately, but the good news for me is there is Einstein coming down the row, computers will be available, and it also will be a very nice leader option for me, so at the end we can basically gain a new leader at the same time, so that is perfectly fine. Funestus will go for Mandela, can go for the bro sports, but for now won't build 1, instead builds 2 more cannons, going up to 32 strength. At least I have knowledge that international agreement and, more importantly, the refugees are not in the deck, so maybe the worst strength event I don't have to fear getting hit by. I this turn can't really use my politics phase, I basically have to just skip it. And then as you can see, I will go for Einstein and I will go for computers this turn. I also considered going for Bill Gates with computers, but I do think Einstein is the better choice here, first of all, because him being on 1 civil action cheaper actually makes quite a bit of a difference, because now I can go for 1 upgrade to computers and I still have 2 civil actions left to go for military theory, which I do think is a very solid turn, and also I have already 10 resource production, so I don't need Bill Gates as much for the additional resource production, and when I take the computers away, Bill Gates is also not really that strong enough an option for Arne. Even if the computers are available, those would then be available only for expensive, and I do think Bill Gates, maybe you could still do some stuff with him, but it would not be as strong that I maybe have to consider denying it him from Arne, And with that, I do think Einstein is just the better idea. I have some science already saved up. I have a revolutionary idea. I do think Einstein can produce some nice culture for me. With being able to go for computers, he also really pushes my science production very nicely. Maybe sets myself up for a bunch of impacts also very nicely. So I will go for Einstein, I will elect him, I will go for computers, for one upgrade, and then I will go for the military theory. Sadly missing out on the rough idea, but I have no as much science, that I probably don't really need it. The MacEgg maybe could have been nice just to have a cheap technology in hand, but at the end I was just very happy about this turn. Having the military theory in hand now, having a way to get more strength. Probably I don't have enough time to build up for a big war. But I, with Einstein, can just produce some culture peacefully. I have the fast food chains. I still have more than 20 culture lead after I will get a culture production at the end of my turn. So at this point, with having that strong resource in science production, the fast food chains, Einstein, I was thinking that I'm not in a bad position to maybe win this game at the end. I will now draw some new cards, colonization card, another war even, and the impact of architecture. I actually discarded the Napoleonic army tactic because with having that many swordsmen, an outdated modern army tactic should be just as good for me as the normal Napoleonic army tactic. And I have all of the technologies to upgrade it to a fully upgraded modern army tactic. Arne Seeds, I was happy that there is no strength related event, just a civil unrest which doesn't hit anyone. Arne will now play the reserves, and actually, I do think that if I would have gone for Gates, Einstein would have been an even stronger leader maybe for Arne with the multimedia. So, yeah, definitely no need to deny Bill Gates. For me, will go for multimedia. Even without Einstein, it gives him a nice boost, going up to 9 science production, 7 culture production, and there is at least Fleming to maybe synergize with the multimedia. Then he takes the reserves. He at the moment still, no, he actually doesn't have the culture lead. He has basically almost the equal amount of cultures I have, and funestus is about 20 culture behind us. Funestus Seeds, and this turn I do get hit a bit by an event. The politics of strength makes it funestus get some additional draws, maybe being able to find some potentially nice impacts for him, and sadly I don't have the chance to get an additional draw at my next turn, which definitely could hurt because the impact of architecture is the only impact that I've drawn so far, and it maybe could be playable, but funestus will now go for bro sports, maybe it's not that easily playable, and if I don't get any other impact, I was a bit worried that if I don't reward my nice economy with any impacts. I mean, there are already a bunch of impacts seeded, so maybe there are some nice ones already for me in the deck, but maybe there are just those in the deck that aren't nice for me. So I was a bit worried about missing out on the next draw, and definitely not too happy to see this event revealed. Funestus develops the bro spots, develops the engineering, can now build bro spots for only 4 resources, which I think is quite strong. He will build one going up to 36 strength, putting a little bit of pressure on his opponents, taking the multimedia, the reserves, and the modern infantry, so taking a bunch of cards from the row. Now it is my turn. I could consider pushing the impact of architecture, but at this point it was just too uncertain for me if that will end up being a nice impact for me or not, so I kept it in hand, especially because I won't draw any additional cards at my turn anyway. And now, my first idea was to this turn develop one military tech, maybe even 2, then go for the military theory, build a little bit of military, and then just take some cards or something like this. But I have to be a bit careful because, especially with the decision on which the technology I want to develop, because the problem is there's a chance that the age will end before my next turn, and if I don't develop any of those H2 technologies, there might be the chance that I will have to discard them and can't go for a modern army tactic any longer. There are still a copy of modern infantry, there are some rockets that are coming down the road, a copy of tanks, so it could maybe be fine to not develop one of those H2 techs. But this turn I won't be drawing any cards anyway, and while it maybe could be nice to keep more cards in hand, because I thought I want to keep the colonization cards, I want to keep the impact, and I also want to keep the tactics, so I thought maybe it could be nice to still develop the military theory to be able to keep all of those cards in hand. However, if I use one of my military actions to actually develop the to reveal the modern army tactic already, then I have just enough military actions to be able to keep the colonization cards and the impact in hand, and with that I actually went for just developing all 3 of the techs. And it's of course a bit of a commitment, but on the other hand, those are relatively cheap technologies. Developing them gives me in total 9 cultures with Einstein. I already have them in hand, so I do think it's perfectly fine to just develop all of them, so that I am prepared for going for not outdated modern armies, and I just get a bunch of culture with Einstein for relatively cheap technologies. And then I will just build a cannon, build a cavalryman, reveal the tactic, going up to 30 strength, not being the weakest, just in case there's an impact of strength already in the deck, and then I have 4 civil actions left. I thought it's nice to take this military build-up. Arne might get stronger again, and just the ability to get a lot of resources that I maybe could still need for the military, if it only is to maybe be better set up for impacts. I have a bunch of population, getting some units for free might also make the fast food chains a little bit bigger. But I have a bunch of resources and I want to invest them into something nice, and for that I wanted to have the movies. That is maybe nice to have with the impact of architecture, impact of variety, and just gives me some additional culture production. And then I have 1 civil action left, and I did consider taking the bro sports or the rockets here, just having a cheap technology to develop it with Einstein, which could maybe make it that at the end I can get 1 more technology out than otherwise. But with me getting not any draws in this turn, I thought it could maybe also be relevant with only having an impact that is maybe at most neutral, maybe with the potential to be very slightly good for me, but probably rather neutral. I wanted to, if possible, get an additional draw step, and with that I made a decision to keep 1 of those cards on the row and instead increase my population, having more civil actions at the following turn and making it more likely with taking less cards that the age won't end before my next turn. Additionally, Fleming is coming down the row, who is a nice leader for Arne, and now he has to pay an additional civil action to actually get him. I actually thought about if that maybe is even bad for me, because with the standings in mind, it's really important for me to finish before funestus, and now if Arne has to pay an additional civil action for Fleming, it's maybe more difficult for him to go for Fleming and United Nations, and if he doesn't go for the United Nations, it means that the United Nations are available for funestus, and it could maybe be quite fine for him to have this wonder. But at the end, I thought I do think it's still a very, very valid reason for me to maybe have a chance to get an additional draw at the next turn, and it could be overall a relatively close game. I thought I have a nice position, but with me at the moment not having any impacts, I was a bit worried that maybe with the wrong impacts, that definitely the game could still get very, very close and could go wrong for me. And so I also thought it is still relevant to maybe make the turns a bit harder for Arne, and with that I increased my population instead of taking 1 of those cheap techs. I keep the impact and the 2 colonization cards. Arne seats, the first impact is opened. I was not too happy to see this impact, the impact of happiness, so already the first not so great impact being revealed for me. I have the Forbidden City, that's of course the disadvantage of that wonder, not counting for happy face related events, meaning that both of my opponents catch quite a bit up to me in culture. Arne will not go for Fleming. Will he also go for the United Nations? No, he will go for rockets, develops them, builds 1, and then takes the satellites. With that also making sure that he's not the weakest, in case there's an impact of strength. Now it's funestus' turn, he will also push. The event revealed is the impact of progress, also not ideal for me. Again, I'm the worst in this, and also sadly I at the next turn will develop the military theory, so I could have maybe also improved this during my turn. And also if Arne adjusted his turn, I actually didn't develop the satellites yet, so he probably also will improve it soon. So for him maybe it also would have been better to see this revealed later on. Funestus will go for the United Nations that Arne led on the row for him. He will then take the patriotism, increases his population, builds religion, which I do think makes a lot of sense, because building this one first of all makes the United Nations bigger, going from 12 to 16, because he has now 4 different urban building types, but it also produces him 1 culture, and also 1 culture with Mandela, because that was actually the last missing happy face for him, so I think it makes a lot of sense to build this religion, and to already build it this turn with giving him 2 additional culture reduction, and then he takes the engineering genius, and has now with those reserves and the patriotism the ability to finish the United Nations, but still having a bunch of resources available to do some other stuff. Now it's my turn, and as you can see it is still age 3, so I have 1 more chance to maybe get some impacts. Maybe I should see the impact of architecture now, so that I can, if I draw another nice impact, maybe seed both of those impacts into the deck. on one hand. On the other hand, there are some impacts that I will improve during this turn, and also I still was not certain how nice this impact will be. I will now build one movie, but probably I won't be able to build more. And if funestus just builds in the pro sports or operas or multimedias, he is already three ahead in this impact, so it would be a completely neutral impact. Maybe he builds even 2 urban buildings potentially, so I was not willing to commit to this impact yet and rather just kept it in hand. And now, I said we'll go for the movies, just increasing my culture production, also preparing for something like impact of variety. Sadly, happiness is out, but also potential impact of culture, even though at the moment I'm the weakest anyway, so not that impact isn't really impacted by that play. Then I have a bunch of civil actions left, and I did consider maybe just taking 2 techs and a revolutionary idea, because that would allow me to develop the military theory and 2 technologies in the next turn. With the play that I will be going for now, I will only develop the military theory and 1 technology at the next turn. So I could just get 3 more culture out of Einstein, but I did think that the things that I will be doing instead are somewhat relevant, even though the concrete value of it is maybe not very concrete or not that directly seeable. I will increase my population. I will play the military build up this turn. I will play the revolutionary idea, develop the military theory, increase my population again. Then I want to use all of the resources, but I still want to make sure to draw 3 cards. That means that if I want to do this, I need to build 2 units. But the most strength that I can get, I will get by getting a full modern army tactics. So I actually made the decision to just build 2 riflemen, even though I have now a lot of infantry units. But I probably don't need to build any more military anyway. Arne definitely won't go for a war against me with having this modern army tactic and even the Michi Castle in order to sacrifice a unit. So I don't think there's any danger, and so I just built those 2 riflemen. Now I'm at 46 strength, and with the last civil action I will take a mechanized agriculture, having a technology that I can develop at the next turn. And at the next turn I have 20 resources, 16 I need to finish the fast food chains, meaning I have 4 resources left, and with having no free population there's not that much to do, but with having the mechanized agriculture I can go for 2 farm upgrades, which improves my impact of agriculture and impact of balance by quite a bit. So I thought it is nice to have this mechanized agriculture available. So yeah, I said I could have gone for an additional technology for 3 safe culture with Einstein, but I do think this gives some advantages. First of all, funestus has the United Nations. If I just stay at 30 strength, yeah, he can just, if he has an impact of strength, build in multimedia, finish it in the United Nations, and then just evaluate the impact of strength with it without there being any risk that we as his opponents will get stronger during our turn. And I didn't want to make it that easy for him to evaluate the impact of strength with the United Nations. He can still do it, has a lot of resources, even after finishing the United Nations, but at least he has to destroy something now, maybe build 2 more cannons or something. So that's that. And also, if there's no impact of strength, at least both of my opponents have to be a bit careful now. I could go for an aggression, maybe even with sacrificing a unit if they don't have that many colonization cards. Maybe they have to just get a bit stronger to maybe not risk an aggression. So I did think that this is maybe putting my opponents into a position where it's a bit more tricky to figure out the best turn, and also just prepares me nicely for a bunch of impacts, and yeah, at the end it was worth it to me to maybe miss out on 3 culture from Einstein. At the end of my turn, of course, I was very curious to see what cards I will draw, because it could be quite important to maybe get a nice impact that gives me some culture. Sadly, as you can see, I draw another colonization card, a hybrid draw, but no impact. But I do draw an aggression, so maybe if one of the opponents doesn't increase his strength, I could go for the aggression, at least getting 3 culture for sacrificing, but also at least having the chance to maybe pull an aggression off. And also at least I still have a 6 culture lead before funestus, I have the better wonder. So I was still thinking I have a fine position, but with not having any impact in the deck, there are definitely some that could still be bad for me. So I was a bit worried that I might get punished here for maybe getting hit by the politics of strength and only drawing 1 impact. Arne will take a look at Funestus' hand. He will cede. The event revealed this time at least is a somewhat fine event for me, giving me 1 more culture than Funestus and 2 more than Arne, so mostly a relatively neutral event. He will play the reserves for food, increases his population, and will interestingly build a rocket. So it's definitely somewhat interesting, but he will also build a multimedia to get more culture production. With building the rocket, he reveals the positional army tactic and then goes for the computers. Him revealing the positional army tactic but staying at exactly 46 strength did make me think that probably Funestus doesn't have an impact of strength in hand, because if he would, then Arne takes a big risk now with not getting stronger than me, that Funestus maybe just gets stronger, evaluates this impact with the United Nations, and I would win the tiebreaker against Arne, so just with building 1 more knight or something, or developing the satellites, he would be able to prepare for this, and it's just that easy. He maybe just needs to skip computers. Him taking computers, I do think, is actually quite a big sign that he either has impact of science in hand, or maybe already has seeded it, because that allows him to go for an upgrade at the next turn, and with me having committed some resource now, it would be guaranteed that he will be able to overtake me in science production at the next turn, so that is really a hint towards impact of science, and him not using the relatively easy step to get stronger, I do think is somewhat of a sign for the impact of strength to not be in Funestus in hand. However, the next turn there were some things where I maybe thought maybe it could actually still be in his hand, but I do think it would be a bit risky from Arne. First of all, Funestus will cede, opens the impact of harmony, giving +20 for everyone, so a completely neutral event. He will go for the modern infantry, plays the patriotism, plays some more yellow cards, builds the modern infantry, upgrades 1, finishes the United Nations. At the moment all of the players have the exact amount of strength. Will Funestus now evaluate the impact of strength with him winning the tiebreaker? The answer is no. He instead will evaluate the impact of wonders, which I was fine with, because it gives me the same as for Funestus, but I do get 2 points against Arne. And yeah, he then takes the tanks with the last civil action. And yeah, after seeing Arne's turn, I thought that impact of strength is probably not in his hand, unless he maybe has very nicely analyzed Funestus' turn already. Because if Funestus has actually the impact of strength in hand, I do think, for that, but in order to explain his reason, it's important to see that he reveals the entrenchments tactic now, going up even up to 54 strength. And Arne, of course, also had knowledge about this tactic. I think it would be a big guess, but maybe it could be seen by Arne that Funestus maybe actually, with especially me being the big contender in the standings, wants to have the impact of strength in a shape where he actually gets 14 points against me instead of only 7, meaning that maybe he's less likely to evaluate it, and with having the entrenchments tactic going up to 54 strength, and with me, after finishing the fast food shades, not having the option to get stronger, and Arne with only having 6 resources, even if he develops satellites and builds something like Rifleman, he also can't get stronger than Funestus, meaning if he has the impact of strength in hand, then maybe it actually makes more sense to play it, because Arne can develop the satellites, which will then make him stronger than me, and then he has the chance to get 14 points against me, and evaluating the impact of wonders now instead of seeding it makes it that I don't get the 2 points from the fast food trains. So that made me think that maybe if Arne has seen all of this, it could be that impact of strength is in hand, but I do think it would be a big bet, and I probably would not see something like this myself, so I thought it would be quite challenging to see something like this, and with that I rather expected the impact of strength not to be in the deck. On the other hand, I had a bit of a feeling, just because Funestus went for all of those strength and puts himself at an amount of strength that we both can't overtake, that again gave me the feeling that maybe the impact of strength is in there, but there's of course also the impact of competition, where all of this makes a lot of sense. During my turn, there are basically 2 big decisions. The culture differences between them are relatively small, but of course, in such a close game, that could still be relevant to decide yourself for the right option. The first question that I have to ask myself is how to use my politics phase. At the moment, the impact of architecture is exactly the same for me as for funestus, and one better for Arne than for both me and funestus. And Arne at his turn, if he indeed wants to go for computers, which I thought he definitely could do, as him taking it over developing the satellites and getting stronger could definitely be a hint towards impact of science, and then it would actually give him +3. So I would basically get 3 culture against funestus very likely when I see the impact of architecture. Alternatively, I could play the occupy thanks to the Image Castle. I could sacrifice a swordsman and just get 3 culture from the Image Castle for free against both opponents. However, that would be at the cost of getting -1 in the impact of competition, an impact that definitely might be in there, and also 2 in the impact of population. So that's that. But of course, if I see the impact, there's the chance that maybe an impact will be revealed that I will improve during my turn, mainly the impact of impact of agriculture and impact of balance. So I was quite a bit worried that maybe one of those impacts will be opened, also the impact of technology I will improve during my turn. And so I definitely considered just going for the occupy, but there are also some impacts that maybe could be nice to see revealed. For example, the impact of competition, because I will at least consider to disband 1 swordsman during my turn, and maybe it is actually true that the impact of strength is in there, and then it could of course be very important to see it right now to maybe open the impact of strength at a time where I am still stronger than Arne. And with that, I at the end went with the impact of architecture, but I do think it's a very close decision. When I go for the aggression, I also remove 1 option from me that I do now have with still having the swordsman lying around. And at the end I went with ceding the impact of architecture, but I was really hoping that there's no impact revealed that I will improve during my turn, so I was very relieved to see the impact of colonies revealed. Which of course is on one hand bad, because it's an impact that gives 3 points for funestus against me, but overall I was still happy to see that there's nothing like impact of balance or agriculture revealed. Then during my turn I will definitely develop the mechanized agriculture. I could go for the civil service, but impact of government and impact of progress are already out, so it would only give +2 for the impact of variety. So going for mechanized agriculture should be better. I go for 1 upgrade. First idea was to just go for 2 upgrades, finish the fast food chains, but there's definitely an alternative that has to be considered, and that is to disband 1 swordsman and build an HA farm instead, giving me 1 safe culture because of the fast food chains, giving 2 points for every worker in farms instead of only 1 for every worker in units. But I buy the save point with 2 impacts that get worse. It's not the impact of balance, because when I build this farm I have 9 food production and I have only 9 culture production anyways. The impact of balance, where the difference would be higher than for the other impacts, is not downgraded by this move. But there's the impact of agriculture that would be 1 worse, and there's the impact of competition that would be 1 worse. And so I had to think about what is more realistic, that both of the impacts are in there. If that is the case, I probably should go just for a farm upgrade. Or if it is more realistic that none of those impacts are in there, and then I should go for disbanding the swordsman and building the farm. It's only a very, very small difference, but I thought it's a close game, so I did ponder a little bit about this, and I do think I actually make the wrong decision at the end, because I think I maybe considered it too much that there is actually the impact of strength played by funestus, but I do think it's maybe not that likely, and then the impact of competition gets more likely to be in there, and with that already being relatively likely in there, it's definitely possible that the impact of agriculture was also played at some point by one of the opponents. So I do think I maybe should have just gone for the upgrade, not getting the save point, but just staying better in both of those impacts. But I actually made the decision to disband the swordsman, because there are a bunch of other impacts that could be played by my opponents, but especially with funestus going for this military push, maybe just wanted to prepare in case either I or Arne have the impact of strength, but definitely could be impact of competition, and I do think maybe because of that I should go for the farm upgrade instead of going for the disbanding and building the farm. That means that I can now finish the fast food chains for 23 points instead of only 22, and the remaining selections I can take the civil service away, and then the last 2 are not really relevant. I will just take the endowment. With that, as you can see, I will beat 191 after my production, so I'm 10 culture ahead of funestus, but I don't have knowledge about too many impacts, only the impact of architecture, but it is neutral compared to funestus. There might be something like impact of strength in there, impact of competition is not that great, so that's a bit bad. On the other hand, I thought that impact of science could potentially be nice for me, because that one would give me 7 against funestus, and it might be seeded by Arne, with him now having the chance to go for computers. So I thought with the 10 culture lead and also having a even bigger lead against Arne before the final impacts, I still have decent chances, but I just don't have, no, it just depends a lot on the impacts that will be coming now. Arne now takes a look at my hand, doesn't get really any relevant info. He will push, the impact of competition is revealed. With that, of course, it means that disbanding the swordsman to build a farm definitely won't get rewarded, and there's still a chance for it to get punished if the impact of agriculture will be in the deck as well. And another impact that is not really that great for me, and I definitely started to worry a bit about maybe just losing too many points by some of those impacts. Arne will go for the computers, will go for the satellites, upgrades one lab to computers. And with that, it definitely kind of looks like the impact of science might be in the deck, which might be nice for me, but of course also gives Arne plus 7 points against me. And while maybe it's more important for me to finish before funestus, but if I win this game and funestus loses this at the end, then I would even be in a position where it would already be guaranteed that I win the group at the end. So it could still be nice to finish before Arne, of course. And now we are before the final impacts. As you can see, I have a small culture lead now only. There are 4 unknown impacts, 1 impact that is neutral against funestus and gives Arne plus 3 against me. Arne is a little bit behind, but with the impact of science and also impacts like culture or something, he could definitely catch up. And I was a bit worried. Impact of culture I was worried about. It might definitely be seeded by Arne and would get funestus plus 7. If there is indeed still the impact of strength, it definitely could go very wrong here. The first impact is indeed the impact of science, so that at least gives me plus 7 against funestus, meaning at the moment I have again a relatively comfortable lead before my 2 opponents, and Arne has catched up quite a bit to funestus with this. Then we have the impact of balance. I was very happy to see this impact. That gives me a big boost against both my opponents. Maybe it was seeded a bit earlier by one of them before I managed to improve this impact by quite a bit. So after those 2 impacts, I thought now things are looking quite nice for me. Then there's the impact of architecture, which was seeded by me, giving Arne plus 3 against me. But now there's an impact that makes things a lot closer again, the impact of culture, making it that Arne is actually now tied with me, and both of us have now a relatively high lead against funestus, so at least it looks like I might hopefully be able to finish before funestus, unless the last impact is actually the impact of strength. Then funestus would just overtake me by 1 point, which would be quite a bit bad. So now I was really a little bit afraid to see the final impact. Is it the impact of strength? That would not really be a nice outcome. Or is it an impact that will just put Arne ahead? Is it an impact that lets us even stay tight? Or if it is it an impact that gives me more points? And the impact is the impact of variety giving me plus 18 and Arne only plus 16, funestus only plus 16. And with that, I was very, very relieved to actually win the game at the end by 2 points before Arne and 15 points before funestus. An extremely close finish that definitely could have finished other and differently. So, no. Extremely close game, very exciting finish, and at the end I was just happy to win this. I sadly didn't draw a lot of impacts, partly also, of course, because I was weakest and got punished by it by the politics of strength, but only at the impact of architecture, which made me worry a bit. But luckily there were some impacts where then, just because I was prepared nicely for a bunch of them, I scored some points, but it definitely very easily could have gotten otherwise, because Arne actually told in the chat that with his last politics phase, he seeded the impact of variety as a relatively neutral impact, but he could have actually pushed the impact of strength in there, which would have given him minus 7 points against funestus, but plus 7 points against me. He said that he thought that he expected to not have that good chance to finish before me, and that maybe he has to rather concentrate on funestus, just maybe with seeing that I have the culture lead and I have a very balanced civilization and being relatively nicely prepared for a lot of impacts. But if he would have played the impact of strength instead of the impact of variety, things would have been a lot different. Then the culture from the impact of variety would be removed. Arne would get +7 against me, would actually win the game, and funestus would not gain -2 against me with the variety, instead get +14 against me and would actually finish one culture before me. So, yeah, with his last politics phase, Arne basically at the end decided the game, which is of course a bit of a tricky position to be in, but he played to what he thought are his best outs, and at the end, of course, also could have potentially gone for the impact of strength, won the game, but it was an extremely close game, and then ceding an impact where he just gives 7 points to one of his opponents could also backfire quite heavily. So I do think it was a very reasonable play to go for the impact of variety. And with that, I'm actually able to win the game. And one thing that also is maybe interesting to note is that funestus also maybe made something that was completely the right thing to do, but in hindsight, actually not, because he evaluated the impact of wonders with the United Nations, which gave him the same amount of culture as me, but both of us +2 against Arne. If he wouldn't have evaluated this impact and just would have kept it in hand, then that would mean that I would have had 2 less points and I would actually tie with Arne, and that would actually be very relevant for the standings, because now with me getting 5 points against funestus, as we will see in the standings in a moment, I'm actually guaranteed to win the group and I will be able to go back to Grandmaster in the next season, which I'm very happy about. However, if I would be tied with Arne, I would only get 3.5 points, then I would be exactly 5 points ahead of Arne in the standings, ahead of funestus in the standings, and if he would then win the last game and I would lose the last game, he would still be able to tie me in the standings and he would win the tiebreaker then. So with the United Nations evaluation, actually he now in hindsight, of course, was definitely the right thing for him to do, to just get 2 points against Arne. But in hindsight, he actually made it that now I win the game and he doesn't have any chances any longer to win the league. So a very exciting game, very exciting finish, well played by my opponents, and I was happy how I navigated the game mostly. Going into H3, I think, with a relatively strong position, with some interesting decisions, with going for Cook, also Forbidden City, being able to finish 2 H1 wonders on Bronze Mines, thanks to the push from the developed territory, and also getting both Border Conflict and a Foray. I'm happy how this game went overall, and of course I'm very happy on what this win means for the standings, which we will be taking a look at now. And with me winning this game and funestus losing this game, I am now 6.5 points ahead of funestus in the standing. So even if I lose the next game and he wins the next game, I would still be able to move on to the Grandmaster division in the next season. Yeah, so a very wild game that we just saw that definitely could have ended differently. For example, I said just with Arne pushing the impact of strength, then out of the sudden funestus would be in the lead now and I would need to win against him in the last remaining game. So definitely could have gone very differently. I'm a bit lucky that this game ended like this and that I was able to win it and funestus actually finishes last. But with this outcome, I'm very happy to be able to go back to Grandmaster for the next season. And I'm overall very happy, of course, about my performance, at the moment being at 4 wins and 1 second place out of 5 games. I will still show the last game, as I think it's a relatively interesting game. It's not finished yet, but relatively close before finishing. So it won't matter as much for the standings. We'll decide which player gets at the second position, which of course doesn't have a big influence, but could still be nice to maybe be at the second position instead of the third, and of course also counts toward the click rating. So I hope you're still looking forward to the last game. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. And with that, I say thanks for watching and see you in the next video.